granniopteryx. She knows the truth, she's linking every link.
Hello. I decided this time, because I had some very interesting responses to some of my videos, that I'd go through them. The last time I did that, a lot of people said do it again, so that's what I'm doing. Meanwhile, I have to warn you that my ever generous husband gave me the cold he had last week, and because of that there might be quite a few jump cuts while I'm taking nose blowing time and cough time out from the video. So apologies for possibly a rather jerky presentation here. Okay, well, one of the posts that prompted me to make this video is this one right at the top, a latest one, and it says, hang on a minute, I've just brain addled with the cold. This was about the Monbiot piece I did, in which I discussed an article in The Guardian by George Monbiot, in which he said we have to accept more migrants or face extinction. I don't know how he managed, well, I still can't work out how he managed to see any logic in that. It's like dinosaurs saying we must bring in more mammals or face extinction. Yeah. Yeah, perhaps we are dinosaurs. I don't know. Anyway, this guy here, talking about that Monbiot piece, said, I cannot see how allowing in illegal migrants is green. Something else some of you might not know is that Monbiot describes himself as an environmentalist. So this particular post is referring to the illogicality. But you see, we all should know by now that the green movement isn't about environmentalism, really. They may say it is, some of them might even think it is, but it is not. It's about restricting human life. And restricting human life is usually to do with socialism in some way. It's people who feel that too much freedom is bad for us. And that's what it's all about. And yes, anyone who's interested in the environment should not be pro-migrant. And here you have the exact illustration of that. And this post continues. They use up more natural resources, increase the need to build housing, lately on green field sites. Oh, yes, they do. And recently there's been some talk of an enormous, practically a whole town being built just for migrants. They devastate our wildlife. Yep. I know there are instances where you find that migrants have been trapping ducks and geese and such like in public parks for the purpose of eating them. And I did hear in one situation where, when there were pigeons in Trafalgar Square, there were people, South Asians, I'm sorry to say, who were trapping pigeons. And these pigeons, by the way, very diseased and inedible. And the thought was that they were going to be served as food in restaurants. That was the idea. I don't know how true that was, but certainly you wouldn't go to the trouble of trapping pigeons in Trafalgar Square if you just wanted to trap them and throw them away. They devastate our wildlife, and in their own countries have appalling animal welfare standards. Yeah, that's for sure. They pollute without thinking and leave their rubbish anywhere and everywhere. And that's true as well, because people who come from areas like, well, Pakistan or sub-Saharan Africa, they come from cultures where public cleanliness isn't considered a priority. So the post ends, having open borders is the antithesis of a greener future. And yeah, it is, absolutely. The country becomes more crowded, becomes less publicly responsible, and the ecology, of course, suffers. All right, this one here. British people keep waiting for a politician to save them. Either take your future in your own hands or roll over and surrender. No, that's a silly binary, actually. The British people do believe, generally, the British people of British culture, believe in the rule of law. We haven't had serious political upheaval involving troops since the reign of Charles I, soon to be toppled by Oliver Cromwell, if you remember. So we want to do things by the rule of law. That doesn't mean to say you're rolling over. Unfortunately, the rule of law that our government has and the rule of law that the general population has are two different things. And we have to decide which one is going to prevail. But the sort of people who attack policemen and start bashing up government facilities, they're the ones we don't like, the pro-Palestine people. They don't believe in the rule of law either, and just look where that leads. Now here, is it just me? That graph ends before 2025 and was already well into downward territory. Do you know, I didn't pay attention to that. How do you credit Trump with that decline if the graph ended before his term began? So let me have a look at that graph right now. So I asked the question, have overdose deaths in the USA gone down since Trump closed the border? And I got this, the CDC, whatever the CDC is. Oh, yeah, of course, it's Center for Disease Control, isn't it? Anyway, CDC reports nearly 24% decline in US drug overdose deaths on February 25th, 2025. And it says here, provisional data shows about 87,000 drug overdose deaths from October 2023 to September 2024, which is down from around 114,000 the previous year. And as the Post suggested, that's before Trump took office. Multiple factors contribute to the drop in overdose deaths, including widespread data-driven distribution of naloxone, okay, which is a life-saving medication that can reverse an overdose. Okay, so we've got better medication to deal with overdose. While this national decline is encouraging news, overdose remains the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 44, highlighting the importance of sustained efforts to ensure this progress continues. President Trump's first declared opioid overdose to be a public health emergency in 2017. So it looks like things aren't as simple as the Joe Rogan show showed it. It does seem that Trump might have put more resources into overdose amelioration when he was in office, and that program might have continued. So he still might be responsible. But yeah, it looks like the Rogan figures weren't exactly as clear cut as it appears. And my apologies for not noticing that. But hey, that's what you guys are for. And thank you very much for pointing this out. Okay, right. And here, this is again, this is the same poster. You seem to accept the premise that there was significant drug export from Venezuela to the United States. I'm unconvinced that was anything more than a Gulf of Tonkin justification. That was the Americans' excuse for getting into the Vietnam War, so sort of cooked up violation against the United States. Like Vietnam, Afghanistan and Iraq, it will all end in tears. The United States will leave with its metaphorical tail tucked between its legs. Well, they might. You're quite right about that. But I do believe that there was that there were very good reasons for going into Venezuela. I mean, all you have to do is look at the expressions of joy, almost universal, of the Venezuelans when Maduro was taken prisoner. Now, we also know that Maduro didn't win the last election, did he? he had something like 30% of the vote, like Keir Starmer, and his rival had something like 60% of the vote. I don't remember the figures offhand. It was some sort of a disparity like that. But he refused to leave office anyway, and he had his guard around him, and nobody could do anything about it. So I think Maduro was illegitimate, and I sort of agree with Marco Rubio in his assessment that Maduro was a criminal, head of a drug cartel that had taken charge of an entire country. And yeah, although it may be, I don't know, this drug thing may have been a Tonkin type thing. I can't say yes or no because I don't know enough about it, but it may be. Even so, I think that Trump did Venezuela a big favour. And also, it has to do with Iran, because Iran and Venezuela have very close ties. And there were Hamas training camps and military installations, Hezbollah military installations in Venezuela, and I don't think America wanted Hezbollah right on their doorstep. So there may have been stuff that we don't know about going on as well. So from the stuff that we do know about, I reckon that Trump did Venezuela a favour, and judging from the reaction of the Venezuelans, I think they tend to agree with me. Yeah, let's carry on. Oh, somebody agreed with my point about colonization. Thank you. Yeah, it says here, Monbiot is a raving mad zealot who should be ignored by any sane person. Well, unfortunately, we can't ignore them because people like Monbiot have the ear of the Guardian, and the Guardian, well, the Guardian runs the philosophical background for most of the people in the BBC and the Labour Party. So we can't ignore them. We just have to call them out. And sometimes it's rather fun as well. It says here, if Trump was that concerned about deaths from drugs, maybe he needs to look a bit closer to home, like the CIA, who made Los Angeles the drug capital of the 20th century. Listen, I thought it was the Californian government that made Los Angeles the drug capital of the 20th century. Yeah, okay. Or don't forget the opium trade through Afghanistan. Yeah, we know about that. Loaded onto NATO planes. I don't know about that. I mean, this seems to me like a lot of assertions. I haven't seen any proof of that, but yeah, there's a lot of people making a lot of accusations here. For all I know, there is a drug trade going on. Well, of course, there's a drug trade going on, but we knew what was happening in Venezuela, just generally. This is apart from the drugs. So again, I go back to my previous comments. Okay, ahead. Corbyn, what an evil fucking vampire he is. Yeah, that'll do. I'm sorry, I used a bad word. But in connection with Corbyn, I think that's entirely excusable. And this one, 101 things to do with turkey feathers. Make yourself a new jumper. That was referring to the furry jumper I was wearing before. And yeah, it does look a bit like turkey feathers, I have to admit, but it's nice and warm. Sorry, blowing my nose. So this one says, I was talking about Iran, the possibility that the action in Venezuela might have an effect on the Iranian government. And this person here says, I would hope that the Iranians fighting against their regime follow it through to a successful end. Yeah, they are completely, you see, how the Iranian mullahs got into power was they used their mosques as battle emplacements. They were full of arms and full of ideologues. And as soon as the Shah was booted out and Khomeini came back, they all came out of their mosques fully armed and ready to take over the country. That's what happened. Now, The people who are fighting the regime right now, they don't have that sort of organization. They are unarmed and just a huge group. I have heard that some of them feel that it's life is so little worth living under the Iranian theocratic regime right now that they are prepared to just walk into the bullets. But they have nothing to fire back with. And that's the problem. We hope that they would succeed, but I'm not so I'm not so sure they will. If not, the regime would try and ensure that no such uprising can ever take place again. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of bloodshed there. There already has been. The streets would, yeah, yeah. But of course, I would also guess that the Israelis. My dog is crying. Um, Sorry, I might have to get up and let him out in a minute. I would also guess that the Israelis will quickly put an immediate stop to that as well, win-win situation. You see, Israel does have limited resources. If you look at the difference between the size of Israel and the size of Iran, it's like New Jersey fighting China. It's just it, I can't expect the Israelis to throw their soldiers on the line for a battle with Iran. I don't know how they deal with it, but yeah, I have heard that the American bases. Can you hear that? I don't know. My voice isolation might be cutting him out. Um, American aeroplanes, heavy lifting aeroplanes, are coming into American Air Force bases in Britain. And I'm just wondering whether they're there for a reason. Getting from Britain to the Middle East is a lot easier than getting from America to the Middle East. Just a minute, I'm going to let the dog out. Well, what happened was the dog was whining because my son was outside the door and he didn't want to disturb me because he could hear I was making a video because we're going to go to Tesco's. Isn't that exciting? I need a whisk. Right. So yeah, I believe I was talking about the Iranian thing. I think that either America is preparing to go into Iran in some way, or they're just making sure that the Iranians know that they have that capability. So maybe they won't wholesale kill their own citizens. Another comment about Monbiot here. George Mombidiot. Well, yeah, not bad. The man who wanted the Peak District cleared of farming and sheep to restore the landscape of 2,000 years ago. And the extinction of people living in the countryside completely. Idiot, of course, he thinks flooding the UK makes sense because it will cause a total collapse of our society. And yeah, I agree with that. As I said, I don't think the eco warriors are in any way really concerned about the environment. He hates us, all of the native British, but will he not just go away to where he isn't so offended? No. All right. Then there's this comment: could Venezuelan oil have anything to do with this? Yeah, well, I'm sure it might have something to do with this. And I'm quite sure that Trump will be saying oil for the American people, because that will, I suppose he would expect that a lot of American people will be quite happy about the possibility of oil security. But Venezuelan oil, that they have a lot of it. It's not very good quality, and it's very expensive to refine. And in any case, as we all know, America has enough of its own oil. So I don't think that that's a game changer. It's just a bonus. This one, the entire term illegal war is an oxymoron. War is by definition a violent use of force in total disregard of the usual rules and niceties of diplomacy. There are no laws on wars. They are very unruly things. Yeah, there are laws on wars. There always have been. It's sort of like a game cooked up by the elite, and we do this and we do that, and there are some things we don't do. In Shakespeare, Henry V, there's one scene where the French have gone behind the British troops and have killed the as the now I've forgotten his name. Llewellyn, yes. He was the Welshman and one of the soldiers, and he's stamping about saying, "They killed the poys." That's Shakespeare's way of dialect in Welsh dialect. The French had gone behind the British troops and had hit the supply wagons, which included a lot of young people who were, servants, the squires, and that sort of thing. And this was considered a really bad violation of the rules of war. So there have always been some sort of rule to this, even in medieval times. Right, so I mentioned the Ukrainian war and the asymmetric aspects of it. And somebody here says, not all of us accept that Putin started the war in Ukraine. Don't forget, NATO's been expanding eastwards for the last 30 years, in spite of the assurances given to Gorbachev that they wouldn't. And then this person here says, those assurances, even if they were given, were verbal and not part of any treaty. Russia invaded Ukraine in violation of a 1997 treaty obligation to respect Ukrainian sovereignty. Yeah, I disagree with many of my subscribers about Ukraine. I think Russia did a terrible thing, and yeah, that's my opinion. And as you see here, two people, two separate opinions. It's it's reasonable for somebody to argue that Putin was worried about NATO, but I don't think anyone could really suggest that NATO is an aggressive organization. It in the warmongering way. It wanted to extend its influence, but it wouldn't be prepared to do that with tanks. And Putin was. Look, that's my opinion. Yeah, you're quite welcome to your opinion about it as well. And here's one I want to read out. Not that it advances the discussion, but I just like it. George Monbiot, a man who has form for being a clueless, bigoted, Anglophobic arse wipe. Yeah, right. I like that. There was just one more that I did want to read to you, though, if I can find it. Ah, another Jew. Yeah, we've got a few people who say that, and there was one. Ah, here, right. Guess Mon Boyts, badly spelt, it should be Monbiot. Guess Monbiot's ethnicity. It's always them. And I wrote back, them, are you talking in code? Because I knew that's what he was doing. And then the response was, come on, Granny, you're sounding like a typical liberal. Look, I don't mind sounding like a typical liberal. I'm not, but if occasionally, well, even a stopped clock can be right twice a day. We're not talking digital here, of course. You know exactly what I mean. Yes, I do. Jews always seem to be behind anti-white propaganda. They can have a homeland, but we can't, right? I find that sort of thing, that sort of thing gets me very angry. First of all, there's this them business. It's like this guy thinks we have to talk in code, like people don't insult Jews all the time. Yeah, somebody else put another Jew. But it's like he seems to think that we're all in some sort of a little secret group that's fighting against this Jewish conspiracy. And I just want to say, like I keep talking about this Hungarian joke about the man who dropped the keys to his car at the other side of the car park, but he's looking for his keys underneath the street light, like 200 yards away, because there's more light there. Um, it's a distraction. Jews have contributed to Britain very much. And I got so angry with this, I actually looked up about World War II and the contribution of Jews to Britain winning the war. One of the most important contributions was a fellow called Ewan Montague, who was Jewish, who devised the Operation Mincemeat, you know, the man who never was, the dead body that was washed up in Spain with documents on him that sort of implied that Britain was going to attack Germany through Greece instead of through the northern coast of France. And as for they can have a homeland, but we can't. Well, let's have a look and see what Monbiot thinks of a Jewish homeland in Israel. What does George Monbiot think of Israel? George Monbiot holds a highly critical view of Israel's government and its actions, particularly regarding its treatment of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. He has repeatedly described the actions of the Israeli government as both genocide and ecocide. I mean, he's worried about ecocide in Israel. They are the most careful of the environment of any country in that entire in the whole Levant, by the looks of things, and of course the old genocide thing. So that's absolutely wrong. Monbiot is just against anything that's liberal and democratic. And yeah, I did it. Yeah, he is Jewish, apparently. It says in his bio, he was brought up in a Jewish family, which means he separated himself from the Jewish community already. He was brought up in a Jewish family. It means he's not Jewish anymore. At least that's the way he likes to think of himself. I suspect that come the Islamic takeover, he will be as Jewish as the chief rabbi in their eyes. The culture of our country is under threat, and it's not from Jews. And there's, you know, and sort of making this whole secret society, echo quote, them in quotes, that sort of thing. It's just distraction techniques like a magician uses. All right, well, yeah, that's it. That's my rundown of some of the comments on my videos for this week. Now I'm going to stop this recording. I'm going to go to Tesco's, and then when I come back, I'll edit the video and upload it if I have the strength. And till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.